Okay. Hey, Ron, did you get sworn in?
Yes, I did.
Yay! We are now a team of 6, all valid. And we have a quorum. All right. I'm calling the meeting. It's opening it at 6:30.
6:29.
Oh, by the time, okay. We have Bill and Ron and Carol and Alyssa, Lisa, Mary and Sandy. Then Michael and Q are online. Did I see Lisa come in?
Oh, the other.
Yeah.
Okay. So here we go.
Okay, we have a notice of public hearing pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaw, Division 6. A public hearing will be held on Wednesday, November 4th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. on the notice of intent for Michael Trojano, care of Lockwood Architects, P.O. Box 95, Onset, Mass., to construct a barn addition located on Assessor's Map 5, Lot 1003C, 15 Granston Way, Wareham, Massachusetts.
Thank you. Before we get going, I needed to say welcome to the Wareham Conservation Commission meeting of Wednesday, November 4th, 2020. I forgot to do that. So, but is there anybody here for this project?
Saw somebody in. I just saw his name come up.
Is Bill online from Lockwood?
I'm not sure if he is, but I think the owners
The
are
owners
on, so
are.
we could kind of start. I'm just pulling up the plan for that now.
Yep. So Mr. Bichette will read to the project.
Okay, so this project site is at 15 Granston Way in Onset. And the project involves the construction of an addition to a barn in the buffer zone to a coastal bank. A 16 by 20 foot barn addition is proposed, approximately 71 feet from the top of the coastal bank. The location of the proposed addition is flat existing lawn area. There's no grade changes proposed as part of the project. The barn addition would have a concrete foundation. Erosion control should be installed between the work and the resource area. Something like a silt fence should be installed to protect that construction area. We did get a DEP file number for the project. So I would recommend the project be approved with the standard order of conditions.
Yes. Is there anybody here to speak for this particular project? Like to add anything that Mr. Bichette didn't cover? I know the homeowners are here.
Bill Lockwood's here too.
Oh, okay.
That's what it just said. I don't have.
Yeah, Bill, anything you would like to add? You must be on mute. We can't hear you. I see the mouth moving.
Said he thought Dave covered it very well.
You just need to speak closer to your mic, I think.
You hear him, Sandy?
Yeah, I can't
I'm
really
not
make
here.
that out.
I'm hearing a mumble, but no words. I know he's trying to say something, but I cannot hear him.
Do you have your, Bill, do you have your mic on?
Right now, he's currently muted.
Yeah, he's on mute.
Yeah, he is at the moment. Before he wasn't, but now he is.
Yeah.
Unmute yourself, Bill. There you go. Yeah, still
see.
can't hear him.
Yeah, I see mouth movement, but no words.
All right,
Good question, Sandy.
do the homeowners have anything to add before we start asking the board questions? Okay, I'll go around for questions from the committee. Bill? Any questions? Jim, any questions? Sorry, Jim.
No.
I know, sorry. Ron?
Yeah, just what is the addition of the barn going to be used for?
I think it's just basically additional storage area
I went with him today.
for equipment and whatnot.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, that's it.
Carol, any question?
No, that was the same question I would have asked.
Okay. Alyssa, I know you visited the site. Do you have any questions?
Are there any trees on this site which are going to be coming down? I just was thinking, I didn't check or look for that. Is there a large tree there, or are there no trees? Does anybody know?
I don't think there's really much clearing that has to be done. I think it's kind of just an extension of their existing barn.
It is extension of their existing barn. I only wanted to know if there was a large tree in the way, or maybe not. I don't see it. I don't have the plan on my screen, so I can't see what's there.
Hold on.
There's nothing indicated on the plan.
Yeah, I didn't see anything indicated that there was anything there.
Can the
No, I think
homeowner,
I think it's just lawn areas, basically
can
what
the
it is.
homeowner answer that question for us? I'm not hearing a response.
Yeah, I don't believe there's any tree clearing that has to occur.
Okay. Anything else, Alyssa? Mary, any question for you?
No question.
I have none. Michael, any questions? Hearing none. Q, do you have any questions?
No,
Thank you. Is there anybody online that would like to speak for or against this project? Seeing and hearing none.
Motion to close the hearing.
Thank you. I have a motion to close the hearing.
Second,
I have a second by Ron. All in favor, I'll do a roll call. Jim,
Yes.
Ron,
yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Alyssa. Mary?
Yes.
Sandy, yes, the hearing is closed.
Accept the notice of intent with the usual and customary regulations, as well as the silt fencing during the project.
Okay, so we have a motion for standard order of conditions plus silt fence.
Second.
I have a second by Jim. All in favor? Jim,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Alyssa,
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Sandy? Yes, it is approved. And please, Mr. Lockhart, before you start any work, see Mr. Bichette for the paperwork. Thank you. So that is it for, now I lost my agenda. Bear with me. There it is. Okay, now we're on to continued hearings. We have a Lone LaCoy. Is anybody here for that particular project?
Yeah, that's something Bill Lockwood is representing also. This is one where it's going to be a little tricky if we can't hear Bill because, this was a project I have some concerns with and did not recommend approval of. So if there's going to be any discussion, Bill, we really can't hear you, unfortunately.
Should we just push it on to next meeting?
Elisa, your mic is a little soft too. Maybe you need to sit a little closer to it.
Okay. Should we,
Wait, Bill. I know you're trying.
I can hear him. He's very soft.
It's an improvement, but still can't hear you.
Yeah, we really can't hear you, Bill, well enough
We
to have a discussion.
did you just ask if we can continue the
Okay,
Then if the commission decides to continue, the next meeting date is the 18th.
or do you want to table this until later on in the meeting in case he can get his audio fixed?
Yeah, that's fine.
I'll take a motion to table.
I
So moved.
move that we table the meeting until the end.
The-
and see if he
The
can-
hearing,
hearing it until the end.
I have a motion to table to the end of the hearing, motion to table the hearing until the end of the meeting.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor? I have to go through the roll call. Jim,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes,
Alyssa?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Sandy? Yes, it is tabled. All right, next in line is a Glen Petrolo at 6 Preservation Lane. We've had a lot of documents on that. Is there anybody here for that hearing?
Madam Chair, Bob Rigo with Riverhawk Environmental. I'm here for the hearing.
Thank you. Mr. Bichette, I know we've got a couple changes that have come through, so it's your turn to discuss the project.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay, so this project site is at 6 Preservation Lane, and the project involves the construction of a pier, ramp and float in Beaver Dam Creek, which is within land under the ocean, salt marsh, riverfront area, and within a coastal flood zone. Initially, the proposed structure was approximately 170 feet in length, but only approximately 85 feet of that was from the mean high water out into the water. So they have reduced the length of the landward chunk of the pier. So there's not as much walkway over the land at this point. At the last meeting, we were also waiting for some comments on the project from Mass Division of Marine Fisheries and also from Mass Natural Heritage. We have received comments from both of those entities. Mass Division of Marine Fisheries has made some comments relative to the height of the pier over the marsh and stated that they felt that the proposed pier should be higher based on the width of the pier. We have since received a revised plan from the engineer where they reduced the width from 4 feet to 3 feet wide, therefore making it such that the deck does not have to be quite as high anymore because of the reduced width and the 1.5 to 1 ratio. We did receive comments from Mass Natural Heritage, and they had no adverse comments about the project. One of the other plan revisions that came about as a result of some discussion was the size of the pilings for the pier. Initially, they were proposed to be 6 by 6 inch pilings, which is a little small compared to what we normally see. We typically see 12-inch diameter pilings for these coastal piers. They did upgrade that to make these 8-inch diameter pilings. So I'm going to have the engineer speak to that a bit in a moment. And then my only other question was in terms of the installation of the pilings on the marsh area. I had questioned how that was going to be accomplished. And the engineer explained they're going to use sort of an A-frame tripod that would be mounted on the marsh, and then that would be used to pound the pilings in. So I am a little curious about that. I've seen that sort of thing before, but typically for much smaller piles to be used for other purposes than for a pier. So maybe that can also be explained as well. So those are my comments at this point, and those are the revised or the plan revisions that we have in front of us tonight. And so I'll leave it up to the engineer to discuss further the changes.
Thank you. Bob?
Okay, thank you, David. Yeah, so as discussed, one of the things we changed was the width of the dock. So we made it, or the pier, excuse me, we made it 3 feet wide. So now at its closest point to the marsh, it's 4.5 feet above, which does provide for the 1.5 to 1 ratio that the Department of Marine Fisheries was looking for. In terms of the piling size, we've done lots of docks with the 6 by 6 pilings, but based on David's comments, we talked to Keith Waylow out of Situate, and I forget the name of his company, but he's installed a few docks for us and potentially may work on this project. And he said, without a doubt, definitely the 8 by 8, which is a square piling, would certainly be sufficient for this section of the river. So we've shown an 8 by 8 max piling size, and are definitely comfortable that that will withstand everything, all the tidal fluctuations. The pier and I'm sorry, the ramp and float will be removed, seasonally. So those are just held in place with a structural ramp from the pier to the float, and each season those will be removed from the water. In terms of installation, the pilings inside of the river will be installed using, they'll be installed from a barge. The pilings over the marsh area will be installed, as David said, using they'll be installed by hand. A large tripod gets set up and drives there's a hammer that's placed high up on the tripod, and it hammers the pilings into the ground into refusal through the marsh. And that, again, those both the 6 by 6 and 8 by 8 pilings, that's the method they use. Keith Waylow uses it's Harbor Moorings, actually. His company just came to me. That is the method he uses to drive those size of piles. That's about it.
So in terms of that tripod, again, I'm curious about how that actually sits on the marsh and how that may or may not disrupt the marsh just by the fact of it being operated on the marsh. That I guess is a concern I have.
It's very low impact. I mean, there's the tripod is composed of probably 6-inch diameter pipes, I guess, maybe, that are probably 40 feet tall each, and they each have a foot that's welded to them to kind of spread out the pressure on the marsh. So it pushes down on the grass a little bit, but it's only holding the weight of the actual tripod structure and the piling up in the air. So it's not a significant amount of pressure, ground pressure, when divided by 3. And you know, once it's removed from the marsh, the grass just kind of comes, you know, comes back. It does get flattened out a little bit, just like, you know, any method or walking over the marsh, but it does spring right back.
And what's the weight of the hammer that's used to pound the pilings in? I mean, that's got to be.
It's not a slide hammer, it's a pneumatic hammer. And it's an electric pneumatic hammer, so it may weigh 60 pounds or 100 pounds, but it's nothing, nothing too significant. You know, certainly it's probably a little more ground pressure than you know, a large person walking across the marsh and standing on you know, each leg of the tripod.
Hmm.
And it's a low impact technique that's used, that's kind of recommended for installation of the pilings over the marsh area.
Now, I notice also that the float does not have any pilings.
It does not, no.
So,
It's held by a structural ramp. There's galvanized connectors that connect the ramp to the pier and the ramp to the float.
Anytime.
And again, that's common. This design, there's tens of them to more in the North and South River Marshfield, which is pretty high current, that you know, Keith has designed and installed in this manner. And it's just a low impact technique for installation of the dock also, or an float, excuse me, without any ties to the river.
okay. And as far as tidal action there, these locations where these currently exist that you see in Marshfield is similar to this?
Yes, stronger currents in the North River, absolutely stronger currents than are expected to be here. And tides, bigger tide range.
Okay, I don't have any further questions at this point, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Bob, I know you answered a lot of questions for Dave. Is there anything you want to add to the project before we start asking the board for their questions?
No, I think that's all.
Okay. Jim,
No, I have nothing.
Ron,
No, I think Dave covered most of it.
Carol,
No questions.
Alyssa?
I have two questions. One is, I know in some places you need to put a stairway so people who are walking along the beach can get over and keep walking. Is this an area, David, that needs a stairway? Because it's only 4 feet high. It's not like they can really,
Adam, can I answer that question?
I don't care.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, thank you. Yeah, so basically, seaward of mean low water, for a distance of 10 feet, you have to have an area that's 5 foot high, or you have to provide a walkway. So where, for mean low water seaward, we have more than 5 feet under the dock. It's only over the marsh where it's 4.5 feet. It gets, by the time we get to mean low water, it does provide for more than 5 feet of access under the lower structural portion of the or stringer for the dock.
Under the stringer. It's fine.
Yeah, so that's it. Dave, if you could slide up to the profile, maybe that could show it a little better. Basically, there's a blue line that occurs at station like 48, say. Down a little to the left, Dave, and that goes up at mean high water. So for mean high water forward, you need 5 feet, and as you can see, there's more than 5 feet there, but we have it depicted as 5 feet minimum. So you could walk underneath the dock at that point.
Thank you. I have one other quick question, and tonight nobody mentioned how long is the dock now that it's been shortened from 197 feet?
Oh, it's a total of the pier is 85 with a 15-foot ramp down, so the total distance is 100 feet from where the ramp connects back landward back towards the shore. So
Thank
100 feet.
Thanks. Thank
So I
you.
think your question is what is the overall length? Is that what your question was, Elisa?
Well, it would be 85 plus 15.
Well, that's for the ramp to get onto the pier and then the pier, fixed pier, but then you also have the ramp and float, which adds an additional 33 feet.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's 133 feet.
Right, sorry, yes, yep. Yeah, and that ramp, it's depending on the tide, it'll move in and out with so it'll get the distance, overall distance will be highest at high tide and then lowest at low tide, shortest at low tide.
Yeah, as far as the height thing in terms of providing stairs, I think you might want to check on that because I think you need 5 feet between mean high and low, not,
Yeah.
beyond mean low water.
Yeah, and I misspoke. But seaward and mean high, and we do have that. We have 5 feet seaward and mean high. Our profile shows mean high water and then the mean high tide line. So you can see it's mean high water is elevation 1.8, and the bottom of our dock is greater than 5 feet above that. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Mary, any questions?
Wonder if the work of this tripod will be affected by the tide?
They just do the installation at low tide when there's no water there.
All right. Thank you.
Q? Any questions?
Just the erosion factor. With these type of materials and everything that you're going to be using, is that going to come in play for later on when there is some kind of erosion? You're going to have to probably take that. These things probably been done like before, but with that tripod action, I guess that's something that's going to come into play with the erosion factor, I guess.
Yeah, we're gonna put the tripod just gets put on the marsh. Like I said, it does squish down the grass a little bit, but it's still, the grass still remains and springs back with some time. So it's a muddy bottom peaty, substrate anyways that the marsh grass is growing in. So it's not going to erode more than it does now. It won't. By doing the pier and keeping everything elevated above, the impact's limited related to the area of those each piling or the pilings in total, all the area that go into the ground. So it's pretty limited, and it's less impact than having people walk back and forth over the marsh to access the river.
I have a couple more
Michael,
questions.
any questions?
I'm good, thank you.
I have some questions, but is Lisa on?
I am. I have no
Do you have any
questions.
questions? Okay.
No, thank you.
Is Charlie on? But I have a couple questions. What's the size of the foot for that A-framed equipment to knock the pylons in?
I'm not
What's the size?
100% sure, but it's a couple feet probably of area.
So it's a wide enough base that it will not indent the marsh much?
Correct.
And question for you, you talked about seasonal removal. What is coming out at the end of the season? The ramp and the dock?
The ramp and the float. Yep.
And the float. Where
Yep.
would they be, how will they be removed and where will they be stored?
The float will be disconnected and then it will be floated down the river to a ramp, and it'll be picked up at that ramp and then stored on an upland area of this site or somewhere else, but not within the buffer zone. The ramp will just get pulled up onto the dock, onto the pier. The ramp will get pulled up onto the pier and just stored on top of the pier.
So no way will either the float or the ramp be stored on land along the coastal bank? Is that a good way, is that a question? Yeah.
Yeah, or on the marsh or any of that, correct. It'll be
Yeah, so
removed from
they
those.
won't be dragged ashore.
It will not, no.
Okay. Is there anybody on the line that would like to speak for or against this project?
I have a couple more questions, Sandy.
Okay, go ahead, please.
What's the length of the piles to start with?
I 30 feet maybe. I'm unsure to answer that question. I'd have to talk to the dock installer, but I believe it's 30 feet they start with, and then they're cut
Okay.
off.
So what I would suggest, I think, to the commission in terms of this whole A-frame setup is that when this is going to start, that be monitored, and if it appears that that's causing damage that's not acceptable, then some other methodology is going to have to be utilized to install these pilings. That would be my recommendation to the board as a commission, to the commission as a condition of approval for this project, one of the conditions.
David, I have a question, Sandy.
Okay,
David, would it help at all if we got a drawing of the tripod?
I think it would, but I still would want to see this thing in action and actually, a drawing is good to know what it is, but that's not going to tell you how it's impacting the marsh potentially.
Yeah. So maybe both.
okay.
Right, both would be fine.
But it's David, your recommendation that if we approve the project, that no work is done on the marsh until you're able to inspect the tripod for negative activity in the marsh?
Well, I think you're not going to know that necessarily until they attempt to try to do one of these pilings. So I'm saying I think we should allow them to use it and to start with. But if it's seen that this thing is really just tearing up the
Okay.
marsh in a way that's not acceptable, then that's going to
So
have
there-
to be.
So we will ask that you be invited down to watch the activity of using this A-frame.
Yes.
And it will be up your decision whether or not it was a negative impact on the marsh. And it will be your call to say, hey, no more.
That would be my recommendation.
We could condition that in such a way that is handling it.
Yes.
Okay. Was there anybody, I didn't hear anybody that wanted to speak for or against this project, correct?
I would just, before you end, I just
Okay.
would like to recommend a few conditions.
Okay,
I think we've heard most of them.
slowly, so I can write them down.
Sure. One is the condition I just mentioned relative to the A-frame. Two, it's already been stated by the engineer, but I think it should be a condition that the float and ramp not be stored on the salt marsh or coastal bank or in one of the resource areas on the site.
In any site.
Right, as far as within a resource area, right?
Yep.
And that the dock is limited to the 3-foot width because of the height they're proposing. And I think that's pretty much it, other than the regular standard conditions that we have. Oh, and one other, that the work be done during low tide.
Both on land and in water, on the barge. No, the barge has to be done at high tide.
Right,
So
the
the
marsh
work-
work,
Marsh work.
Okay, the marsh work is done at low tide and the water work done at high tide.
higher tides, yep.
So the barge is done at higher tides and the marsh work is done at low tide, lowish tide. Okay. That's 5 plus our standard conditions. Okay. Anything else, Dave, before we close the hearing?
Nope, nothing else.
Okay,
Move that we close the hearing.
I have a
Second.
motion. I have a second. All in favor, Jim,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Alyssa,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes,
Sandy. Yes, the hearing is closed.
That we accept the project for Glen Priola. And with that goes that Dave Pichette will be apprised of when they're beginning, and they will not start until he is at the site. That the ramp and float are not stored in any resource areas for the winter. That the dock it has a 3-foot width, and they will work at low tide on the marsh side, and they'll work at the higher tides with the barge at the higher tide. And our standard conditions as well.
I think you got it covered. That's the
Motion to accept.
motion. Did I hear a second?
I second.
Thank you. So that's it. We have our standard and our conditions, and we have a motion and a second. In favor, Jim,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Alyssa,
Yes.
Mary,
yes,
Sandy. Yes. So Bob, before you start any work, get a hold of Mr. Bichette, because you're going to want the paperwork to be completed before you start the work. And we want to see that pylon, that A-frame.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey, is there anybody on here for the Perego solar systems for 150 Tyhonet and 140 Tyhonet? They've asked for a continuation. Is there anybody online that was here for that project? The condition, our next meeting is November 18th. I'll take a motion to continue until November 18th.
So move.
second,
Second.
I have a motion and I have a second. All in favor, it will be, we're handling the two of them at the same time, 140 and 150. Jim,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Alyssa,
Yes.
Mary,
yes,
Sandy. Yes, we're continued until the 18th of November for these two projects. The next continued hearing is we have 290 Glen Charlie Road. Is it Glen Charlie Road? Is there anybody here for that project?
Yes, I believe GAF is on the line for that.
Is it Bill?
Yep.
Okay. So please, Mr. Bichette, this is a very complicated project. Your turn.
I see Bill is on there, but I don't see him as though he's activated and ready to participate. So let's just hold on for 1 second to make sure he's on board here. I see Brian Grady's
Oh,
on
in the
there.
meantime, we got from the marine fisheries on this. We have the marine fisheries, right? Did we get anything
Yes,
else?
we did get a letter from Division of Marine Fisheries. They did have some comments. They suggest a time of year restriction for the project.
Yep.
So I think I sent that letter around.
Yes, you did. All right. So you're saying Bill's online?
I see him on here, but he's not active to discuss or comment for whatever reason at this moment. I see Brian Grady's on here also. So I'll go through and make some comments and then we'll see if they jump in.
Also, if you'll excuse me, Dave, this is Jamie Medea. I just texted Bill Madden. You all moved so quickly that I think he wasn't realized that you are ready for this matter. I just
Oh.
texted him to unmute.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Well, your report is virtually what you did last meeting, right? So you want to start?
Sure. Just I'm going to just bring up a different view real quick.
One of many views.
Okay, so this project site is at 290 Glen
Please
Charlie Road.
excuse me, Dave, I'm sorry. I've just heard from Bill Madden. He's
Yep.
having trouble with his computer at the office. So I'm going to take notes of your presentation and yours, and he will text me if it's indeed hopeless for him technologically. Otherwise, we'll ask you to just keep right on going, and I'll let you know how it's going.
Okay, yeah, and if he needs to sign in from a different computer or something, when he signs in, I'll see that he's trying to get on, and I'll let him in if that's an option too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right. So again, the site is at 290 Glen Charlie Road, and this is the Maple Park Campground site, and the project involves the reconstruction of a flume/culvert under the access road to the Maple Park Campground, and this is within riverfront area of the Agawam River, within inland banks, within an anadromous fish run, and also within the estimated habitat of rare and endangered species. We had continued the meeting last time because we did not have comments from Division of Marine Fisheries or Mass Natural Heritage. We do now have comments from both of those entities. Natural Heritage did not have any negative comments about the project. The Mass Division of Marine Fisheries did have comments about the work in that the work be restricted to certain times of the year to avoid disruption of the fish run. So the proposed work involves basically coffer damming off the upstream water source to provide an area where they could work to remove material in the existing flumes and replace those with 3 round culvert pipes, and then use steel sheet piles on either side of the road to support the road base from caving in. So there would also need to be the replacement of some water main within this section of roadway, which basically is this stretch right through here. At the last time we reviewed this, their plan showed the sheet piling extending all the way down sort of in this area here. And the same on this side, it would have wrapped around and came all the way over to here. They've since submitted a revised plan showing a shortened distance of sheet pile, which is where I'm sort of going over with the cursor. And then also on the top side over here. And in this remaining area, they're proposing to, instead of continuing the sheet piling, they're going to slope that and try to vegetate those slopes so that there's less sheet piling work to be done as part of the project. So I did have a couple questions about some of that, only because there's some existing vegetation here that they're proposing to remove and then replace it with sort of a seed mix. So some of that existing vegetation might be left in place in order to not have to disturb the area more than is needed. So that's one question I guess I had on this. Overall, the project does need to be done. The existing flumes are in bad condition, and they definitely need to be replaced, so I'm not opposed to that at all. It's just going over the details of how it's going to be accomplished and how the slopes are going to be ultimately stabilized. Also, at the last time when we initially discussed this, I brought up the issue of an older violation, which involved the placement of fill within this section of the pond, which was never permitted. And so, in my opinion, we should be conditioning this project to also require the removal of all this unpermitted fill that was placed in the pond. I'm not even sure why that was necessarily done, but it was never something that was permitted to be done. And the other issue, again, which doesn't really show up on this plan, but along the entrance road coming into the park from Glen Charlie Road, there's been some clearing along the edges of the road, some of that which is very near the edge of wetlands. Some might even be in the wetlands, but certainly within the 30-foot no activity zone. So that's another issue that I think needs to be addressed by the commission in some fashion. So as far as this project, I would have liked to have heard more from Mr. Madden to go over some of the details. If I don't know if he's on and available to speak at this point.
Sure.
But if,
This is Jamie Medea. I had not expected to speak. I want to answer what questions I can and see if, do you have a waiting room that you can see whether or not he's found another computer?
yes, I do, and I don't see anybody checking in at this point.
Okay, then allow me to simply honor your time by answering what I can. I had not intended to, so forgive my not knowing what Bill would know how to answer.
Sure, no, that's okay.
You are correct. It is a very necessary project because of the erosion having become quite dangerous for the public water main as well as the flume itself and the road. So thank you for acknowledging that. Your question about the vegetation is the one I'm least capable of answering. I know there was a modification to minimize the sheet piling and maximize the natural area. But your question is more about what type of vegetation and whether they have to alter it at all. That I have to leave to Bill to answer for you. So I'm sorry about that. Your second regarding the older violation, I very much respect your interest and concern. However, I ask you to think about not including a condition that requires removal until you've had a chance. So instead, not as a condition, just require them to come in with a public hearing on what you want done as a separate matter, because my understanding is that fill was done because there was erosion of a similar type around a different flume, and it was jeopardizing the stability there. It was not done by the current owners. I can't, to be honest, I must say, I can't say it wasn't done under the current ownership, but it wasn't done by the current owners. So we're a little short on detail, or I am, and we'd like to come back if you can find a way to get this, frankly, emergency project done to meet the time of year work restrictions and protect the water main in storms. I would ask you to consider making the older issue of unpermitted fill not yet having the conclusion that you necessarily want it all removed. You may decide you want it planted differently or shored up or something other than flat out removal, because I think there are facts involved there that would concern you environmentally. So that was the second point I think you wanted to ask about. And the third, there was extra clearing at the entrance by Glen Charlie Road. I think the current owners are aware of that and are, of course, open to being told whatever you want.
Okay, that's fine. The other comment I would make to the commission is this is a project that, in my opinion, is necessary, but it's also a very involved project with a lot of moving parts and detail. We kind of just got this plan last minute, and I honestly have looked at it, but haven't really looked at it in great detail. So again, while I would agree that this is a project that needs to happen, I also want to make sure that we're clear on all the details. and address any issues. So honestly, I would recommend the commission continue this till the next meeting, just to be given the chance to get this digested a little bit better. That's my comment to the commission. The commission can decide to do whatever you wish to do, but that's my recommendation.
Sir, may I speak to that for a moment?
Yes,
Thank you, ma'am. And again, I apologize. It was meant to be Bill. I'm just going to say what I know to say. And that is, this is as close to an emergency as one can get, because in the private sector, to find a contractor capable of doing this work on schedule and on time, which is essential for both the water main and the access route, is not easy. And they've put this together out of respect for the commission. They didn't do it as an agricultural exemption. They didn't do it first as an emergency project. They did it in hopes of getting your conditions, whatever you wanted them to be, included and incorporated. I don't know the answer, but it is possible that if this is continued, they may have to file for an emergency filing in order to get the project even the basics of it done within the necessary constraints. And that's additional work for you. Plus, if more than 24 hours goes by, it goes to the state, and they may not impose the same conditions you would. So I'm not saying definitively don't continue, but bear in mind that it is a very big risk because the erosion is extreme and it is very dangerous. Now, with your permission, I'm going to try to reach Bill by phone. And while I'm doing that, ask if it's possible. I don't know procedurally how you would do it. Can you put a pause on this public hearing and keep going while I try to get Bill onto another computer somewhere? Just so you can continue discussing it tonight while I reach him and find out whether he can definitively get back on.
okay.
We do have some other things to discuss, Madam Chair, so if you want to table this as well, then.
So I take a motion to table this until later in the meeting.
So moved.
Second,
I have a motion and a second.
Second.
All in favor? Jim,
Yes,
Ron,
Yes.
Carol, Alyssa,
Yes.
Yes.
Mary,
yes,
Sandy. We're tabled it until later, little later in the morning, little later in the meeting, so we can get hold of Mr. Madden on the line.
I'm grateful. Thank you.
Is Mr. Lockwood on the line with us? We can hear him. Dave, do you see him?
Yeah, I'm not really seeing him at the moment, so
I don't see him either.
Yeah,
Okay. Well, it's still tabled, so why don't we go with our enforcement orders?
okay.
I understand, yeah.
The first one we have is Boone Ferry.
Hello.
Hello.
I have no idea what the board wants to do on this particular item, but my question is.
Sandy, we're getting some discussion from Alan on the line here.
Yeah, they're hearing you, Alan.
Sorry.
Please go in the other room.
Yeah.
I'm asking you. You asked me to do it.
Yes, dear.
You asked me to do it for you. I'm asking you to do it for me. As he waddles off.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
sorry.
So this enforcement order is regarding some work that was done at 16 Job's Island Road. This involved clearing activity within the buffer zone and on a coastal bank and within the buffer zone to a salt marsh at this site. And this was not permitted work. So the owner, Mr. Ferry, was contacted about this some time back. And we, at the time, stated that a notice of intent would need to be submitted to address the violation and provide detailed plans of the site, so it was clear as to what the extent of the work was, and so that the restoration of the violation could be done. So some time ago, Mr. Ferry had mentioned that he was using JC Engineering to address this matter. I had spoken with them recently, and they say that they have not been given the green light to continue doing this sort of work. So I again contacted Mr. Ferry to be at the meeting tonight to address this issue, which in my opinion is still an outstanding violation that needs to be dealt with, and the commission should get a notice of intent on this to restore the altered areas. So that's why we have this discussion in front of us tonight, and Mr. Ferry is here on the line.
Okay. Mr. Ferry, you want any comment, please?
Yes. So David, if you could go back in those pictures, those pictures, well, to start, I bought this property in June. The enforcement order was issued in like, what, April?
Yes.
Okay, so I hadn't owned it yet, but I was in the process of buying it and moving in. And all I was doing was cleaning up the property. I had no idea that I was doing anything that was against your bylaws. I was not clearing in the buffer zone. The pictures that David has of the piles are 1,000 to 2,000 feet away from the buffer zone. This is a picture of the buffer zone, and all I did in the buffer zone was mow underbrush. If you look, David, if you wouldn't mind going back for me. If you look in the right side of the picture, you can see what the brush did look like. It was just undergrowth, briars, dead junk, and all I did was mow it. I did not clear anything. I did not take any trees down. The piles of trees are further up in the property, and they're all dead trees and branches and brush from around the property. This area that he's showing you is the buffer zone. All I did was mow it. And I stopped mowing when I got the enforcement order, and I talked to JC Engineering, and they came out and looked at everything, and they gave me a huge estimate to survey the property if I wanted to continue and do a notice of intent. And I decided against it because I couldn't afford to spend the amount of money it would cost to survey the property to continue cleaning up. So I decided to stop. So everything has grown back. There's all fresh vegetation at this point. I actually took pictures of it yesterday so I could show you, but I don't know how to upload it. But I have pictures of what it looks like now. And as you can see, I didn't disturb any of the trees. All I was doing was cleaning up the underbrush. Moving forward, I'm not going to touch it anymore, and I would like to just let it grow back. And I expressed that to David, and he said it would be discussed tonight. So I guess.
Yeah, so as far as, the issue of cutting or mowing the underbrush, that is essentially what is not permittable in an area like that. So that is the violation. So in your mind, I understand you consider it cleaning it up, but that's just not something that is okay in an area like that. And hence the violation.
Right,
So,
I understand that now. It's something I wasn't aware of when I started, or else I wouldn't have done it.
Right. So at this stage, though, typically when there is a violation like this, we may require some replanting to be done of the altered vegetation, because things will grow back over time. That, they certainly will, but that could take years for it to grow back to what it was before. So, typically we would want to see some identification of the extent of what the resource areas are, what the amount of area is that's been altered, and what should be done to restore it. And typically that comes in the form of filing a notice of intent with a plan, so everybody is clear on what the status of the site is. So, that's what I think should be done still. But I'll let the commission ask questions and go from there.
Okay. Thank you. Jim, any questions?
No, I don't.
Ron,
No.
Carol,
No,
Alyssa?
So David, looking at this, I mean, I know that getting things surveyed is very expensive, and it's something like this. I did not go to this site, so I don't know what it's actually like. Is there any way that the owner can take and mark off distances, or does this have to be done with a surveyor?
I mean, the suggestion is to do it that way. What I would like to do maybe before that happens, if the commission wants to do this as well, I have not been back there since the initial violation with COVID, with everything else going on. I was under the impression that JC Engineering was in the process of doing a plan, so I wasn't rushing back down there to see what the status of things was. But at this point, I would actually like to revisit the site with the owner, and I would encourage members of the commission to do the same. Maybe we could set up a time so that everybody can see this, or anybody on the commission that wants to see it can see it. Because I think this is the sort of thing that you need to see in person and get a sense of what's what there. And if things are growing back, as Mr. Ferry suggests, then we can see that at the same time.
So I have pictures of everything that David has pictures of, and it's all going back. If anything, I did a service to the environment by taking out the dead stuff and allowing fresh vegetation. I mean, the whole ground is covered in fresh vegetation, I don't know, a foot tall. It's not a severe slope. It's a very gradual slope. There's no erosion, there's no nothing. There's a thick 12-inch forest mat covering the whole property, and it's growing back fine. I mean, I have no problem providing documentation of it.
I know, but I think you have to accept the fact that David is looking for another answer for you by going down and seeing your area. Because as you said, with COVID and all, we haven't seen it. So I think that by looking at it, then we have more of an idea of what we're dealing with. And I think that that's probably a really helpful thing for you.
Right, I understand, and I'm not totally adverse to having strangers come to my house.
I'll bring
we are in the middle of a pandemic, and I have a daughter, and I have elderly people that come and go from my house. We could maybe set something up if that's what you guys want.
Yeah, so I think in terms of reviewing this, we certainly don't need to go to the house by any means. We're just going to be looking at this particular altered area. And obviously, any site visit, people should wear masks and social distance, and it's going to be outside, so I think we should be fine. Again, if it's something that you are saying you don't want to participate in, then I would have to say again, we need to have an engineered site plan. I mean, you got to have one or the other.
I'm listening to them.
Somebody's speaking, because I can't hear them.
Yeah, it's okay.
Well, let me continue to ask if there's any questions from Mary.
No question at this time.
I definitely like the idea of a site visit. I don't want us to really go down one at a time type thingy. So we could maybe caravan with Dave, each in our own car, to go down and look at the site and go nowhere near the people that live there. Safe distance with mask, because I'm sure all of us would like to see where this area had been mowed and what it looks like now.
And so, once again, pictures or video wouldn't do justice to the
Well, you
site.
said you have pictures, but I don't see them.
Is there a way to upload pictures? I can email the pictures right now, if there's an email address, like David's email or something.
I still think it would be something that you need to see in person. Pictures are fine, but they don't always give you the full view of the situation. So, I do recommend the commission either meet there. I definitely want to see what things look like currently. And if not that, then again, we should be requiring to have a site plan submitted.
I agree with David. I think a visit just to take a look. Pictures can only say so much. I think a visit just to see all of the conditions makes sense.
Well, does the committee want to go down by themselves one at a time or wait in caravan with Dave?
Set up a time.
Yeah, I'd say
Yeah,
set up a time and whoever can be there, be there. I think and that way we can kind of use our collective heads to talk about it while we're there too.
This isn't an easy site to find. Right? It's off of Mather?
No, it's not off of Mather, but it's something that's, if we meet, let's say at the town hall, then we can just go down there and I can lead to where it is. So that's my suggestion. And I could speak to Mr. Ferry to arrange a time that's suitable and then get back to everybody and go from there.
Then why don't you speak to Mr. Ferry to come up with a time frame and then email the committee to see who can join you at town hall and follow you down in their car.
So I run a business in town. I don't know if any of you are aware of that. And I work 6 days a week. Is there any way we can do this on a Sunday?
No, because Mr. Bichette doesn't work on Sundays. Well, we can go down and visit without you.
I'd rather not have that. But
Is there
Yeah,
anybody else that
so
can represent?
I think what you have here, Boone, is you have a violation, so you're going to have to make the time to address it, So I'll speak with you and you can decide what block of hour and a half you can make so we can meet there and get this done.
Well, is there anybody else who can represent your interest in this property that can meet us there?
no, I mean, I don't understand. I'm not really privy to how this goes, but you all like 12 strangers coming to your house? Like,
We're not. Well,
Well,
if
no,
you
this-
didn't have, sorry, excuse me, if you didn't have the violation, you wouldn't have to have anybody on your property. I know
Well,
you
I-
didn't consider yourself doing the violation, but we're not coming to your house. We're asking permission to come to your property.
right. Well, my house is here, but I understand what you're saying. I just like a little compassion, I guess, But,
I mean, I think it's a cheaper option to allow us to come and take a look at it than it is for us to require you to file a notice of intent and get a site survey. I mean,
Right.
we're trying to work with you and help you out. So
I agree. I agree. It's just, okay, it's a lot to take in. I mean, especially for, an accident trying to clean up my yard, but,
Well, you and Dave can talk about logistics.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can talk to you tomorrow, Boone, or call you and we can try to pick a time that works for you and we'll go from there.
okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
If I may, Madam Chairwoman and Dave, Bill Madden has found himself on board and able to speak. whenever it's convenient for you to open the hearing again.
Okay, thank you. Dave, do you want to go to the next violation or do you want to bring in Mr. Madden?
Well, we have Bill Lockwood back on. I don't know if he is on where we can hear him again or not.
Is he? Bill, can we hear you?
Lockwood or Bill Madden?
Bill Lockwood.
Lockwood.
Okay.
Bill Lockwood is here.
Okay,
Okay.
Hello?
we tabled Mr. Lockwood's project first, so I'm going to give him a chance to come back first. So we I want a motion to untable LaCoy.
Motion to on table.
Table.
Okay. Jim,
Yeah.
Ron,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Alyssa, Mary,
Yes.
Sandy, we're untabled. Mr. Lockwood, Mr. Bichette will speak to the project at 15 Cleveland.
My shoes.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay, let's see here.
You gonna lose your shoes?
Oh my gosh. No, thank you.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you, Bill.
Okay.
Hold on one second, okay?
Sure.
Yeah, so this project site is at 15 Cleveland Way, and this is in the Indian Mound Beach area. And the project involves the construction of a garage in the buffer zone to a coastal bank. A 20 by 20 foot garage is proposed, and this is within the 30-foot no activity zone to the coastal bank. The lot is very small and does slope steeply down towards the beach. The proposed garage would be between the street and the house, but is within the 30-foot no activity zone to the coastal bank. So again, at the last meeting, we did not have a DEP file number. We do now have a DEP file number, but it's my opinion that the project should be denied because it is a proposed garage within the 30-foot no activity zone. So that's my recommendation on this particular project, and I'll let Bill speak on it at this point.
Well, we'd like to withdraw without prejudice at this point or continue to a further date so we can have some discussions with Dave in the interim, if that's a possibility.
So I would say on that, if you want to withdraw it, that's fine. That would mean that at some point down the road, if you were to recontemplate the project, you'd have to just file a new application.
Or if you want to continue, Bill, how long would you like to continue for?
Let's say 6 months.
I think
Yeah,
that's
so
beyond-
I would say if that's the case, then it's best to withdraw because we'd have to re-advertise and all that for a duration that far out, you know?
Okay, then I think that's what we should do at this point.
So
Okay.
then I would recommend the commission accept that recommendation to withdraw.
Is there anybody here for this hearing? Then I'll take a motion to accept the withdrawal.
Motion to accept the withdrawal.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, Jim,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Alyssa, Mary,
Yes.
Sandy, accepted withdrawal.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all.
Now, I see Mr. Madden on the line. Take a motion to untable the 290 Glen Charlie Road.
Motion to on table 290 Glen Charlie.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, Jim,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Alyssa, Mary,
Yes.
and Sandy. You're untabled. So Mr. Bichette,
Yeah, I'm just gonna get the plan back up here if you want to give me a
then we can
second.
have Bill talk to it. Now, with the Division of Marine Fisheries, they gave us a defined work, a restriction for timetable.
Yes,
The work is recommended from March 15th to June 30th or September 1 to November 15th. So that's we're right there at the end of what recommended time frame. So, okay,
If I
up you
could,
go.
do you want me to interject a thought on that, Dave, or do you want
Yeah,
to comment on
Bill,
it?
no, Dave already spoke to this particular project. Now would like to have any comments you have on it.
Okay,
This is
with respect to that, with respect to the Division of Marine Fisheries letter, that time of year restriction is limited to in water activities. And, you know, that's what we're actually trying to avoid is really in water activities on the site. We think that the steps that we need to take initially with the construction of the project would be the demolition and the placement of those steel sheets. So I don't think we're going to really be in the water conducting much of the work here. I mean, there really shouldn't really be any in water work to speak of. I mean, that's a pretty broad statement to make. I mean, there may be some minor things that a workman needs to do that he may be down by the water's edge initially, but the only work in water is really just sliding those, or is burning the holes through the exterior face of those sheet piles when the flume gets installed. So really, it's not work that's in the water, but it is an activity that may require somebody to be in the water to do it or be nearby that water. So we don't think that time of year restriction would adversely impact what we want to do, and we can work within that parameter.
Thank you for the clarification.
yeah,
Okay,
so let me just ask a question on that while we're on the topic. So Bill, you're saying you're okay with operating within the time of year restrictions that the DMF suggests?
Well, that's for in-water activity. So, I mean, it's not project work limitations. I mean, we can actually do the work. It's work in the water that the restriction, the time of year restriction applies to.
I think they're looking at this as you're replacing flumes and whatnot. That's considered in the water work. So I don't necessarily agree with saying that you don't think this is in the water work.
so maybe we need some clarification as we learn more about the projects from Marine Fisheries as to what they mean by in the water and silk producing.
Yeah,
Well,
because
in the water, silt producing would be something like driving piles in the water, driving piles for a dock or a pier, or something along those lines. You know, all these piles are going to be driven from the upland and through the upland to a distance below grade. So those sheets are not going to be placed in the water.
right, I agree with some of that, but as far as replacing the culverts and all that, that's in my mind in the water work. And so
Okay,
I
so
don't
that
think,
work-
I think DMF reviewed the plans you submitted. And I think if they didn't think most of this was in water work, they wouldn't have put those conditions in place.
I think that's a standard condition that they place on any project that's close to or nearby the water. But I think we can, what was that time restriction? It was we can't do the work between March and June 30th.
No, that's when you could.
No, I think
No, the
Bill's-
restriction. Okay,
Yeah, I
the
think Bill's
restriction
right.
is from March, so anywhere between November 15th and March 15th, you could do the work.
Right.
And we, you know, we would, that's why the urgency is with the closing of this order so that issuance of the order rather, so we can mobilize the contractor, begin work, say in December, do all of the bulk of our work between December and March 1st. and do the exterior portion like the fencing, the guardrail, the slope stabilizations, the roadway, the backfilling, things of that nature. So I think that, you know, the way we've thought it out is that we know that the sheet piles are going to take about 3 weeks to be driven. We know that it's going to take 2 weeks to have our fabricator build the flumes. So we know that those are the two most, you know, critical elements of the whole job, and they have to be done first. So when we excavate out all the unsuitable material that's there and drive our sheets, that's the first work that's going to be done. That's really going to isolate all of our work area. So then when we relocate the water main, for example, you know, that'll be done once those sheets are in place. So we define our work area when the steel sheeting is in place, and we're able to work around that. And the only work that really involves us is getting down by the water is really placing that flume and fastening it to the structure the way we've detailed it on the drawing. So yes, we can do our work within, you know, around that time of year restriction. But, you know, we have our work cut out for us on the job. There's no question about it. So I think we're in pretty good shape with respect to that. It's not 3 months worth of work.
Right.
So are we comfortable with that element of the discussion, at least with the time of year restriction, in our ability to be able to do that work outside of that restriction? We would have to. That would be a condition of the approval, and we would have to comply to it, and we understand that.
Yeah, okay. No, that's fine. Madam Chair, could I ask a couple other questions?
Oh, please.
Yeah, Bill, so I don't know that you heard some of the discussion because I think you weren't able to chime in, but I had talked about what we had talked about over the phone with regards to these sloped areas to be replanted that are currently vegetated to a certain degree, and wanting to discuss what amount of that existing vegetation can be left in place versus tearing it all up and then trying to restabilize it after the fact if there's some of that doesn't necessarily have to come out of there.
Yeah. Okay, those slope distances, the distance along the slope, they're rough. You know, the most extreme case is around 10 feet. And if you look at the existing contours, the dotted lines that are underneath that green shaded area, they're irregular. They're not uniformly graded. And, you know, while we're doing this work in this area, you know, we have a lot of construction equipment that's going to be needed down there. Those sheets are going to have to be staged adjacent to the road. The crane that's going to be used to drive those sheets, the outriggers in and of themselves on the base of that crane are going to extend out in excess of 20 feet. You know, they're going to straddle that entire roadway. So, you know, from a practical point of view, the fence that's there, the guardrail that's there, you know, all that it's in total disrepair. And I think that just from a common sense point of view, it really makes sense to just stabilize, clean that area up and make it into something that is going to have some longevity associated with it, just as the steel sheeting is going to do with those flumes. So that's really the reason why we think we need the area that we do, is because of what's going in down there. I mean, a 20-inch water main is a big water main. It requires a large excavation. You know, we're going to be utilizing that entire area, that entire width of that roadway as construction staging areas. So when we talk about just cleaning up and dressing things, you can see where our water line ends, just in basically the area where that resloping is that we're talking about doing. So we just think it's a way to firmly establish uniform grades and slopes, so we don't have to worry about erosion and you know, those slope embankments falling down like they are. You know, you've seen them, Dave. I mean, those slopes are are caving in. They've been falling in that water for a number of years. And I think that by us making a concerted effort to have something uniform and properly constructed in this area where we know we've had consistent and historic problems just makes a practical degree of sense. And we didn't want to take it down to the bottom of the slope or to the toe of the slope. That would look really nice to do that on each side of that roadway. So we've really limited it to about 10 feet in slope distance. We show our detail. We show that we're going to place that core log right at the toe of our slope where we're going to basically entrench that, and then slope with topsoil up the slope to the edge of the stone that we're placing by the guardrail in the fence. You asked us to look into some more naturalized conservation seed mix to use in that slope stabilization. I went and we selected what we think is a real suitable slope stabilization mix to be used there. We've selected the Curlex 3 erosion control blankets to be placed over that. Those are good for slopes that are in excess of 1-to-1. You know, our steepest portion of slope would be a very small portion of 1-to-1, and then it would taper to, like, say, a 2-to-1 as we head to the east on the right-hand side, on the east side of the flumes. So we think that just in and of itself provides, you know, a far better stable situation than, you know, the existing vegetation would allow for us. I mean, the vegetation from below that area, yes, we'll keep all that. We don't have a problem with it, but I think that, you know, the top piece should be stabilized in a manner that will have some longevity associated with it. And, you know, we work to try to, you know, look into and comply and select something that we thought that you would be in agreement of. So that's why we're doing it in the manner that we're doing it.
Yeah, so this plan that I just brought up is one which indicates the amount and distance of vegetation to be removed in the different sections, such as right here is shown, over here, overall on this side as well. And again, you know, I understand the nature of what has to be done there. I think some of this is basically an effort to make a nicer entrance to the park is what it boils down to. Yes, it is to do with fixing the problem, but I think there's sort of a twofold request as far as what's being put forth here. And so that, you know, and I'm not necessarily even opposed to that, but I just don't unnecessarily want to see natural vegetation replaced with, you know, something that isn't natural just for the sake of the aesthetics.
Well, the vegetation that's there, those trees, you've seen them, you know what they look like. There's nothing.
The trees over here, I agree with. I'm not talking about where the flumes are. Those are definitely in rough shape, but any of the underbrush and whatnot that's in some of these areas, there's not really a whole lot wrong with that stuff.
I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's terrible. I think there's erosion going on there. I think it's not uniformly sloped. I think it's just more of what exists there today that we're trying to remedy. You know, the worst thing we can have growing on those slopes is large trees and large vegetation, things that could become uprooted in a storm or rain event and cause further erosion and subsequent sedimentation of the waterway and the herring ladder that's below that. So, you know, we're looking at it from the perspective of what produces the best long-term environmental impact of the receptor that's downgrading of our construction site. We think that the way we've designed it accomplishes that. It's only a band 10 feet wide.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Bill, on the trees. There's definitely trees that, you know, really aren't going to be able to stay there for several reasons. I'm just thinking more of the underbrush type vegetation below. That is all I'm talking about. If it's going to be restricted to more or less the treed zone, but, you know, all over in here, I just don't recall that as being a ton of large trees.
Well, but there's footpaths that people walk down that slope, the erosion that occurs in a rainfall event. I mean, that's that entire area.
And
That
that's a
entire
steep,
area is brutal.
and it's steep.
Yeah, exactly.
I couldn't get down because I didn't think I could get back up.
Well, I felt the same way. I crawled up and it was wasn't very pretty, but I got it done. But it's a mess over
Mike,
there.
Bill, if this vegetation would be removed, you would replace it with some type of holding cloth and then seeding it with grass to prevent.
Not grass. We're using a naturalized conservation mix that's for upland steep slopes is what we did. It's an earned seed blend. It's specified on the drawing. That seed bed would be covered with a Curlex 3 erosion control blanket stapled in place that will ensure longevity of that seed bed and the growth of the plant material through it.
So if I'm hearing you, it would be better for the stabilization of that slope if we were to go that way versus letting the natural stuff stay.
I think so, given what's going to be taking place out there with the construction.
Because I don't consider it to be substantial vegetation. It's not what you call good stuff. It's just a lot of miscellaneous things that have grown up.
That's kind of how I viewed it.
Well, that's what is natural vegetation. So again, I'm not disputing that some of it needs to go. If the commission's comfortable with it, that's fine. I'm just looking to have the least amount of alteration and still accomplish the project.
If I may say one word, this is Jamie Medea. May I speak for a second?
Yes, please.
Only to say that I get called in when the owner is desperately needing a project done, which they know they have to do because of erosion or maintenance problems. And I can just tell you, I have heard not one word about aesthetics of improving the entrance. Zero, not once. The entire thing has been about, oh God, we've got to do this. It's too much of a risk for the water main. It's got to get done. Just get it done quickly. Not one word about aesthetics, and absolutely whatever you think is appropriate for the vegetation.
And if I just might add, the areas where the steel sheeting is to be installed, we're not removing any of the vegetation downslope from that. All that material is going to remain in place. That is the material that's closest to the river and to the pond. So you can see the only area that we're looking to stabilize is the area that's shaded in green. All those other areas will be that natural vegetation that is growing there. So
Okay.
portion of it is to remain.
Thanks. At the last meeting was continued, I'd asked members could go down and take a look at this site. Is there anybody who had a chance to get down to Maple Springs to see what we're talking about in the last 2 weeks? Who did?
I haven't been in over a year, but I know a year ago when I went in, I was not real happy with what that looked like.
Being what? The railing falling over?
The railing falling over. It looks like it's going to cave in. It just looks like it's just eroding on both sides. And I understand this is a serious project that really needs to be done. Because if it collapses, that destroys the herring run. And how long will it take then to have to try to improve it, especially if you have campers already on site?
Mm-hmm.
Now you can't get in, you can't get out, you have no water. It could create a really big problem.
Okay. Is there anybody else who had a chance to visit this site? Because awful hard for us to sit here and make a decision when we haven't looked at the conditions that Mr. Madden's trying to correct. This is a big project.
I do have one question about what they'd like to do with the vegetation for the slopes. I understand that that is protected for different species. that it's in an area that has endangered species, protected species of plant life and animals? Am I correct there?
Yes,
Okay, the vegetation that you're planning to put in, is that going to support that wildlife and the other vegetation that is native there that is endangered?
the letter from Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program stated that the project would not adversely affect the actual resource habitat of state protected rare wildlife species. That's the letter that they issued today.
Okay,
So I think it speaks for itself.
okay, that answers the question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So nobody else went down to visit this site?
I didn't get a chance to get down there.
Wow, okay. So what I'm seeing here is you're putting the sheet pylon length of it has been reduced, correct?
By about 100 feet, yes.
Okay. Mr. Bichetti, any other concerns other than right now we've been focusing on the vegetation in the three greened areas that we see on the map in front of us, correct?
Right.
Is there any other?
That's correct. Yeah. So again, overall, I like I said before, I am not against the project being done, but I will restate that for a few reasons, I think it's wise to digest this. This isn't an emergency project to the extent where 2 weeks is going to, cause some catastrophic event to occur. They're using this road every day to drive in and out of. It's not like it's being cut off for traffic or anything like that. So again, based on the fact that we just got a lot of this information today, how you might want to condition it. And also, in my opinion, I do think the fill in the pond does need to be addressed. I know the attorney wants to handle that separately, but that's not something that would have been permitted in the past, regardless of the reasoning for it. It was just done with no contact with the commission, and in my opinion, it needs to be removed.
Well,
So
Dave, can you show us on the map where that fill has occurred?
it's all this right here. So previously,
So that's outside of the project.
yes, it is, but it's still a violation. So the pond edge used to be more or less where my cursor is going now. And all of this was filled in for whatever reason. I'm not 100% sure because it was never explained to us. And so that was just done at one point in time. And so I'm bringing it up now because I think it should be correct. But
Do you
you're
think
right.
it should?
It's
do you
not.
think
It's not critical to this project. In other words, this project should still go forward. But I do think this needs to be addressed, and I do think the work along the roadway needs to be addressed too. And as we've heard from the representative, it seems like the owner is okay with discussing those things.
Okay.
May I speak?
Well, one second. So are you thinking about doing a notice of intent and having all that fill removed from the pond?
I'm saying yes, that fill should be removed from the pond. Yeah.
Okay, another part, and that they're clearing along the road coming in, and that has to be stopped or replaced or something. Okay,
Yes. Since the new owners have had this property, the expansion of that road and the cutting of the vegetation of that road along that road has been extensive.
okay,
It used
you're
to just
saying they
It used
didn't,
to just be a dirt road going in there that was wooded kind of on either sides. And now it's a
All
huge
right.
width gravel road and it's cleared out 30 feet on either side.
it's because they widened the road and cleared on either side of the road is what is in the violation.
Yes, some of it. I'm not saying the entire length of it is, but along that road, you do have wetlands
Well,
along the edge of that road.
Yeah. They sort of needed to widen to make sure the campers going in and out can pass each other safely, because that was too narrow for the type of material vehicles that visited the site. Now, the question is the camp still, is Maple Springs still open, or is it closed for the season?
They usually close around the 15th of October. They do have some people that are working down there, and I understand that that some of the people that have campsites, that rent campsites annually, go in there periodically to maintain, winterize, deal with some of their campers. But for all intents and purposes, I think that the date is October 15th. It's not active like it is in the middle of the summer.
Okay. Who wanted to comment? Was that Jamie?
It was Jamie Medea. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Starting first with the question of I'll call it the unauthorized fill, where your agent pointed to the area. And then the second is the expansion of the road with clearing, and some of which was in jurisdiction. My respectful suggestion is to order separately from answering the notice of intent that's already filed and issuing an order on that one, to separately expect a filing of a notice of intent or two notices of intent of what is intended to be done on those two other areas, but not yet to conclude that the answer is complete removal of the fill. Because if we put in the notice of intent the reasons why somebody seems to have done that in the past that had to do with erosion control, you will want that notice of intent to include the elements of erosion control that take care of that same problem. So that
Okay.
is my respectful request.
Okay, I hear that. So if the commission wants, we can ask that this activity along the pond be identified as a enforcement order and notice of intent filed for its activity. But I'd like to go back to the particular project that we're here to discuss, being the three flumes. And
Yes,
what
ma'am.
has to
Thank
be
you.
done, and what has to be done on the scope of this particular work. Now, that's, Dave, can you put your cursor around what we are looking for as this scope of this particular work? Is that the darker gray lines?
Yeah, pretty much this region.
That area,
right?
and
Yeah.
the clearing of the vegetation and replanting in the green areas. We have nothing to do with the fish ladder. We're going to
No,
put,
they're not doing any work
okay.
near the fish ladder, no.
And this semicircle near the top there, that's the copper, that's the dam that will be put in place so they can replace the flumes.
That's right, yep. Yep, there was a comment too regarding, pumping water and making sure that it didn't impact young herring potentially. But I think that's addressed as far as the way they've shown how they're going to do it.
Yeah, and Mr. Madden has this, so he's seen and understands the comments from the Division of Marine Fisheries.
Right.
All right. So, one more time around, I'm going to ask, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to ask any questions on the particular project that we've been talking about, and then I'm going to ask about the filling around the pond. So for the project that we're here for notice of intent, is there anybody who has any questions, starting with Jim?
Oh,
Ron?
I mean, I guess just to go back to David's point is just maybe having a little more time to think about the full scope of the project, because there is a lot to digest and understand about the project. So that would be just my one comment about the project as a whole.
Okay, Carol,
No further questions, no.
Alyssa,
By Ron's statement, is there a time limit? Are we on a time? You know, some people say the bridge is ready to, some people say that it's ready to fall and that we have to hurry up and do this project. And other people have said, no, you know, that this is simply something that has to be done for maintenance. So I don't know which way to go with this. If it's something that has to be done quickly, then I think we should deal with that first and the second part right away.
Yeah, I think to respond to that, I think if it were that significant of an emergency, they would be cutting the road off for all traffic if they thought that it was going to cave in, which is not the case. So again, 2 weeks I don't think is going to be critical to how this, works in terms of the emergency response part of it. So
Can I interject just one simple thought on it? Well, just one thought. One of the major things is with the contractors that are going to price the work. They don't want to even entertain preparing a bid for this until we have an order of conditions. So, 2 weeks, while it doesn't seem like a lot of time, contractor could take on new work within that time frame. We could lose a guy that we're planning on having do some work. I mean, that's probably as big an emergency as anything else, is just ensuring that we can secure a qualified contractor who's going to carry out this work the way it needs to be done and in the manner that it needs to be done and as quickly as it can be done. So that's one other element of it all that's, not directly related to your comment, Dave, but it is of some consequence to us.
I just quickly just want to interject. I mean, to me, what's the difference between having the conditions and having a contractor come out to give a bid? I mean, how does that affect him coming out to give you a price on what it's going to cost to have this job completed?
The conditions, the general conditions, the order of conditions, it always contains items that have a value associated with it. And until they're able to really review a full and complete order of conditions, they feel that they might be subjected to a condition that they don't know about, and it could result in additional cost to the owner. That's what I've just seen over the years.
If I can put this more specifically, forgive me, may I speak, Madam Chairwoman?
yes,
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
More specifically, this was such an emergency project that we actually discussed. Should we file under the emergency provisions? Should we try to use the agricultural exemption? And the conclusion was no, this commission knows how to get this done, and we'll still be able to get bids in, and we'll still be able to get the work done. The road has to be shut down for the entire period of the work. It is not a minor matter where people can come in and go, the entire period, and the water main is at risk and the erosion continues. So it is a genuinely urgent project. On the bidding issue, contractors will not bid until they know it is permitted. It's not just what the permits say, it's they won't bid because once they put their bid in, they're committing to get it done by the time necessary to conclude it. And because the road is the only point of access, that is a point where they have to be sure they can get the work done, or they'll be liable for the damages of not being able to reopen the road. That's
Okay.
the urgency.
Mary, did you have any questions?
No,
I am disappointed that we didn't have, 2 weeks ago, we asked people to visit the sites. You have some idea of what's happening, so you saw what it looked like. I'm reluctant to delay it for 2 weeks because that wasn't done. But I'm just me, not the committee, not the commission. But Dave Fischette, do you see anything coming on other than our standard order of conditions that would be placed on this project?
Yes, I do think there's going to be some other conditions. I don't think they're going to be extreme, but I think in a project this complex, you're going to have certain conditions in terms of where you want to see materials placed or not placed, where equipment can be or not be. You're going to have your time of year restrictions, and there could be other things that you'd want to include, but without having spent the time to look at the plans in detail, that's the other issue. So I guess what it boils down to is you can close the hearing tonight, but the order is probably not going to get issued right away because I'm going to have to spend time looking at the plans and coming up with the proper conditions.
Is it because you
Versus
just
if
got
we have 2 weeks to digest it all and have the conditions ready to go, it's going to end up working out kind of in a similar time frame.
When did you get these? Do I see an 11/4 date on these revised plans?
Yes.
Okay. That's today.
Yes.
So I can see
If
your
I-
comment. I'm sorry, I can see that your comment is that, yeah, these are slightly modified from what we had received earlier.
Ma'am, may I repeat what I just heard that sounded very hopeful?
Don't know yet.
Okay, I mean, but what I wanted to say, if I may, is I thought I heard your agent say he could write the order of conditions between today and your next meeting so that you were voting on the actual conditions. That is all we could ask you to do. We can't ask you to write the conditions today, but if we can get you to write the conditions between now and the next meeting, then we can plan for the next meeting, hopefully a positive vote.
Okay, I understand that one. Dave, if we were to ask you for your standard order conditions plus anything else, would you be really available to do that tonight? You talked about storage and all those other things that would be addition to our standard order of conditions. Are you ready to list
That's what I
those
mean. I
tonight?
probably would not, because again, I'm just seeing these plans today for the first time, so I really didn't have a chance to draft that all in terms of what I would recommend. So that's
Okay,
why
Bill,
I'm talking about the 2 weeks.
Bill, how different are the plans we're seeing on the 4th from what we saw previously?
It really results in a reduction in one type of work and a little bit of an increase in the in slope stabilization. So we reduce the amount of
Okay.
sheet pile and increase some slope stabilization.
So there has been a change to the point that Mr. Bichette is asking for the 2 weeks. Now, is it possible, Dave, that you could come to the next meeting with a standard order of conditions already completed that we can vote on, as opposed to waiting for 2 weeks for the approval and then another week and a half before you issue them?
Yes, I think by the next meeting, I would definitely have any conditioning or any other questions or comments ironed out and have that more or less ready to go. Obviously, when the commission votes on it at the next meeting, if it's voted to be approved, I can't issue the order that day, or it would have to come out the next day or even possibly the following Monday, because I need to get everybody's signatures because we're not getting them at the night of the meeting. But yes, it could come out soon after
So
the
it's
meeting.
possible that if we vote on it on the 18th, we could, if we come in and get signatures done by the 19th, it could be released?
I would say the 19th or at the latest the following Monday, whatever that date is.
Okay. Anybody on the commission would like to comment on that approach?
I mean, I think that makes sense. I guess if Dave can kind of work through some conditions over the next couple weeks, so that when we vote, in a couple weeks to approve the project, that it would be more streamlined to be able to get them the approval faster than what would normally happen in
Okay.
standard.
Now that gives everybody another 2 weeks to go down and look at this project in case there might be some questions you have at the next meeting.
Maybe the same day we go see the other project.
Good luck.
Well, I think that's a good idea, actually. And that way, Mr. Pichette can answer our questions on site.
So we can get caravan from Job Island over to Maple Springs,
Maple Park.
Michael Park Springs.
If you can, if you can, if you can get the other party to come up with a date for us.
Sandy,
Yeah,
can I ask a
we'll
question?
work that out.
Wait. Who wanted
I
the,
can, ma'am, I'm
It's
sorry,
the-
I'll speak for the owner and say, whatever
Lisa.
date you choose, whatever that other gentleman with the enforcement issue has, pile us on that, and I will get you whatever permission you need to be there, either accompanied or unaccompanied. We have no issue with that.
okay,
Thank you.
so, all right.
So Sandy, can
going
I
to-
just ask a question
Yeah.
before you close the hearing? It's Lisa. I have two questions. One is it the applicant's intention to leave the meeting and go and file the emergency application? Because there was more than
no,
one
ma'am.
reference to
No, I
doing
did
that.
not, I did
Certainly
not
not.
hear that.
Okay.
She's correctly, Lisa Morales is correctly asking, are we going to go file the emergency? No, you've come up with a very rational plan for what sounds like an approval as speedily as you reasonably can. And I think based on Bill Madden's assurances about the contractors, we should be able to work with a vote on the 18th with signatures on the 19th or the following Monday. It'll be tight, but we can't ask any more of you when you have still to draft. We can't ask that of Dave.
My second question would be, that also gives the applicant 2 more weeks to gather information on the existing violations to be able to address that at the next meeting as well.
We're not going to deal with the existing violations. We're going to stay with this particular notice of intent. And that I'll be asking the commission another questions on the violation. I just want to get a discussion and continuance until the 18th on this one notice of intent. Okay? So we're going, the motion would be we continue into the 18th, at which time we will have order of conditions completed pending our final approval and signature.
Cindy, I
So
think
moved.
Sandy,
progress.
Yes,
Sandy,
I heard,
this is Nancy McHale. I just have a question before you close tonight's comments on this.
okay,
Is that possible?
all right.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Since the stabilization of these slopes is very much in question and is certainly a concern for everyone, I haven't been out there recently, but yes, there were old trails down into the water areas that are very dangerous and certainly does lead to erosion. Is it possible to condition some sort of contained public access or limiting public access on those ways, you know, by either fencing or signage or something like that? Just a thought to try to keep the erosion from happening and to keep the area as clean and possible, you know, as friendly to the environment as possible.
Some of them are limited in space.
Thank you.
Good. You're talking, if I look at the green area, you're talking on the left side where it is so steep, where there are trails now.
Yeah, I'm like I said, I haven't been out there for a while, but my recollection is that most of those areas are fairly steep, but definitely the one on the left is very steep. And if you're looking to have some public access down into there, then perhaps put some stairways down so that people have some way to actually get there.
Okay, Mary, you need to mute yourself if you're talking to Susan. So maybe, see, at the end of that, you can see there's a bunch of boulders. Maybe we talk about a pathway on the other side of those rocks to get down to the water's edge. But Mr. Bichette, do you understand Nancy's concern?
Yeah, I do understand it. I think that's a question also, though, that would have to be addressed by the applicant. They may not want public access down there. That's not, sometimes people go into areas where they're not necessarily
Want to be,
wanted to be there, but they kind of do. So that's really sort of a question for the applicant. If they do want some sort of access to that, that's great. We can talk about something for that, but I agree that it should just be stabilized. If there is some intent to have access down there, which, seems not like the best spot to go down to the river, but again, that's up to the applicant. But if so, then it should be done in a manner that is stable for sure.
all right. Is there anybody else on the line that'd like to comment on this project before we ask for a continuance? Hearing none.
Project till November 18th, with the idea that David will look into some conditions.
Elisa, I'm not sure why, but I can barely hear you.
All right, let's try again. I'm moving that we continue this hearing with the stipulation that David will try to come up with some of the contingencies for this project, and that we will get to vote on it on the next meeting. Anything else I have to add?
No,
Nope.
that covers.
I second it.
I have a second. All in favor of the continuance? I will. Jim,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Alyssa,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes,
Sandy, we're continued. Now, I want to, Dave, what's the best way of going for asking for a notice of intent for the filling in of the pond?
Well,
Do
I
we-
think maybe, we could do it in one of two ways. We could send an enforcement order requesting that, or we could send a letter requesting that, whichever way the commission feels more comfortable. Typically for a violation, you'd want to have an enforcement order on record just so it's understood that there's a violation and that it needs to be addressed. So, but either way, it's really up to the commission as to how you want to do it. If the applicant is willing to address the matter, then, you may not need to do an enforcement order.
Okay.
I just think it's always good to have something of that nature on record.
Jamie, you want to comment?
Certainly, ma'am. The owner is more than happy to address the topic. There's a lot of history that was not in this owner's control, and we would want to have good factual information for you and a proposal for how to address it. A letter asking us to submit a notice of intent for whatever is intended within a certain period of time that's reasonable would be very well received.
Okay. All right.
Just give us time, please, if you would, enough to get enough correct plans in, because Bill Madden's doing this current
No.
project.
Totally understand the critical of what you're working on now. So Dave, a letter in a month or so, 2 months? I'm not unless the commission wants to, I'm not going to look for an enforcement order. I would think a letter to the owners requesting a notice of intent for that fill in.
Yeah, and that's fine. I would give them a couple of months.
Couple
because-
months.
Yeah,
Couple
because it's gonna take a little time for a plan to be prepared, and I know Bill's busy with this and other things, so I would say that would be reasonable.
Thank you.
Is there anybody who objects to that plan? Okay, so that's it. We're continued until the 18th. Thank you, everybody. Next
Thanks.
is the enforcement orders from Scott. I can't pronounce that one.
Vaggart, I think it's pronounced.
Hey, that enforcement order.
Okay.
Oh, I was hoping this would be an easy night. So much for that. It's 8:30 already. Okay. Dave, it's up to you now.
This project, or this location, is 34 Point Pleasant Circle, which is in the Shangri-La area. As you can see, this site is on White Island Pond. This site plan that you see is a plan that the applicant had submitted for some previous work that was done there, which was a previous violation. That was addressed through an order of conditions and complied with. Most recently, I had been notified that some work was going on down by this beach where stone was being added all down by this water's edge, and like a sheet, sort of a low sheet wall was sort of staked into the ground along the front of that stone. So I did go down there and take a look and did see that this was occurring. So I did file an enforcement order or submit an enforcement order to the owner. Nobody was there at the time when I stopped by. And so I had sent the enforcement order asking the owner to be on the meeting tonight. I don't know whether they are. But if not, this is what the situation is. And just so the commission is aware of it, of what's gone on. So basically, like 3/4 to an inch crushed stone was sort of, this is a steep slope, and they had like a slide where they were just sliding the stone, you know, with wheelbarrow fulls, just sliding it down to here and then distributing it along the edge of this to, I think, kind of fill it in more than it already was. So obviously something that shouldn't be going on. And so that's why the enforcement order was issued. So I just brought this up for discussion. I was hoping the owner would be here to discuss it, but I'm not sure that anybody's on board with this tonight, but you can ask.
Is there anybody here that wants, for this particular violation? Anybody, Dave? Would you
What I
like a
can do
motion
is-
to,
What I was going to say, what I can do is try to reach the owner again for the next meeting. But if not, then we may have to have this delivered by a constable. I sent it by certified mail. Initially, I did not get a return receipt back yet. So I can't even say for 100% that these people got the letter that I sent them. But that's usually the way I start with it. And then if we don't get any action, then I have to take it to the next level of delivery.
okay, do you want anything from us?
I would just say to vote to ratify the enforcement order.
I think that's the motion.
Second,
I have a second. All in favor, Jim,
yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Alyssa,
Yes.
Mary.
Yes.
Sandy, yes. So one more piece of paper we have to sign on tomorrow. All right,
When do you get in tomorrow? Dave, what time do you get in tomorrow?
I'll be in by 8:30. But I've got to leave a little early tomorrow for some work that I've got to do out, but I'll leave. If I'm not there, I'll leave the paperwork with Sonia, and you'll be able to still come in and sign that. But I will be in the office probably until around about 9:15, and then I've got to bail out.
now Sonia is the woman, go through the door. She's right in the office, right in front of you, if you don't know her. She's
Yes.
with the Ken Buckland's department. Okay. Next,
The next, we have a request for a certificate of compliance at 1182 Main Street. This was for a septic repair. This project has been completed, so I would recommend the issuance of the certificate of compliance for this project.
someone move the motion.
A motion to accept.
Second, please.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor, Jim,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Alyssa, Mary,
Yes.
Sandy. Okay. Next.
The next one, I'm going to have to continue. I was expecting some information on this, which I did not receive for tonight's meeting, so I'm not ready to recommend anything on this at this point. So I'd like to hold off on that, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Now, next topic. Carol and Ron have moved up to voting members. We now have 3 positions available as associates. And I will ask, is Charles Person online? I don't think so. But, okay. Lisa Morales, would you be willing, if confirmed by the selectmen, to serve as an associate for the Conservation Commission?
Yes, I'd be honored.
Thank you. I will ask Kwame Patel, sorry, Kwame Barty. Would you be willing to accept a position as associate member of the Conservation Commission?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, can you confirm your email, because Dave sends it out as Google and Yahoo. Which one is it?
You can use my Gmail.
Okay.
You want Gmail instead?
Yes, because I know Yahoo's a little outdated.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Michael, would you be
Ms. Slavin?
willing?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Would you be willing to accept a position as associate member of conservation if the selectmen so appoint you?
Yes, Ms. Slavin?
Okay, now, what we do need is a motion for each one of them, or you want to do all 3 at the same time? We'll do each at a time. A motion and a second, and then we can vote on recommending the appointment to the selectmen. We'll start with Lisa.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
Second, all in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Alyssa?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Sandy? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6, 0, 0. Next one. Kwame.
Motion.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor, Jim?
Yep.
Ron?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Alyssa?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Sandy? 600 to recommend his appointment by the selectmen. Then we have Michael Mercier.
Motion.
I have
Second.
a motion. I heard a second. All in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Alyssa?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Sandy? 600 to recommend Michael.
Oh.
We had another applicant, Charles Person, but he really hasn't been attending our training sessions or our meetings, so I'm not going to ask for a vote on him. Any questions, anything else?
I have
Raise
a
your
question.
hand. Yes, Carol.
Where is Mr. Pichette's office?
Yeah, we're in the town hall. We're on the, I guess you'd call the main floor, the same floor the town clerk's office is on.
Okay.
And we're just on the other side of the hall.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
His door's got a hole in the middle of it.
Oh, should be easy to find.
Yeah. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. Hearing nothing,
I moved.
I
to
think
close.
we can say,
Motion to adjourn.
what?
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, I like that very much.
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second. All in favor, raise your hand.
Hey.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank
For
you.
an earlier meeting.
Tomorrow.
Everybody have a good night.
Have a
Night,
good
night.
Have
night.
a good night.
Night.